The FIA just changed the rules, and it could flip the entire championship before Miami even starts. One decision, approved in days. 6 major changes, hitting qualifying, race pace, and energy systems all at once. A hidden power advantage, banned. Race speed differences, cut dramatically. Cars that felt unpredictable, completely redefined. And here's the part that should make you stop. The gap between teams had exploded to nearly 3 times what it was last season, after only 3 races. So the FIA stepped in. Fast. Aggressive. Unanimous. This isn't just a technical update. This is the biggest mid-season reset in decades, happening right before one of the most important race weekends of the year. And if the data is right, the team that looked untouchable just days ago might not even be the favorite anymore. It all started with a problem no one expected, this early. 3 races. That's all it took. 3 races for the entire competitive order to break apart. Because the 2026 regulations were supposed to do one thing, bring the grid closer together. Instead, they did the exact opposite. The gaps didn't shrink. They exploded. We're talking about performance differences up to 3 times bigger than the previous season, after just a few weekends. And at the front of all that? Mercedes. Clear. Untouchable. Operating in a different category compared to the rest. Behind them, Ferrari and McLaren trying to keep up. Further back, teams already struggling just to stay relevant. That's not competition. That's separation. And Formula One cannot afford that. Because when races are decided before they even start, fans lose interest, teams lose motivation, and the entire championship loses tension. But that wasn't the only issue. Because while the gaps were growing, something else was happening on track. Something more dangerous. Drivers started talking about it quietly at first. Strange behavior from the cars. Moments where the car didn't respond the way it should. Unexpected slowdowns. Unpredictable reactions. And then, the speed differences. Cars approaching each other with massive closing speeds. So fast, that reaction time became a real concern. Imagine driving flat out, and suddenly the car ahead slows down more than expected. Not because of a mistake. Not because of braking. But because of how the system behaves. That's the kind of situation drivers were facing. And in Formula One, that's unacceptable. Because performance can be adjusted. But safety cannot be compromised. So pressure started building. Not from fans. Not from media. From inside the sport itself. Drivers, engineers, teams, all pointing at the same issue. Something wasn't working. And when that kind of pressure builds, the FIA doesn't wait. They act. Fast. An emergency meeting was called. Every team, every manufacturer, the FIA, all in the same conversation. And what came out of it was something extremely rare. Unanimous agreement. No resistance. No delays. No political battles. Just one clear decision. Change the rules. Immediately. Before Miami. And that's where everything shifts. Because these weren't minor adjustments. They didn't just tweak one system. They touched everything that defines performance. How cars deploy energy. How they accelerate. How they behave under braking. How drivers fight during a race. Even how they perform in wet conditions. It's like changing the physics of the sport, mid-season. Now imagine being the team that mastered those physics. The team that built the fastest car under those exact conditions. Mercedes. Everything they created, perfectly aligned with the original rules. And now? Those rules are different. Not slightly. Fundamentally. So the real story isn't just that the FIA made changes. It's how those changes interact with what each team built. Because in Formula One, it's not the fastest car in absolute terms that wins. It's the car that fits the rules best. And Miami is where we find out who that really is now. This is where things start to feel very specific. Because once you look at the actual changes, one by one, a pattern begins to appear. And it's not random. The first change hits qualifying. Energy recovery is reduced. That might sound small, but think of it like limiting how much charge you can put into a battery during a lap. Before, drivers could store more energy and use it strategically. Now, they have less to work with, which means fewer options, less flexibility, and most importantly, less ability to create those perfect laps built on timing. But here's the twist. This doesn't just make cars slower. It changes how drivers approach an entire lap. Because before, they had to constantly think about saving energy, lifting earlier, managing throttle, preparing for deployment. Now, they can push more consistently. Which sounds like an advantage until you realize something. If your entire system was designed around that complex energy management, you lose more than anyone else. And that's exactly where Mercedes lived. But that's only the first layer. Because the second change hits the race itself. Boost mode, limited. Before Miami, drivers could unleash full electrical power whenever they needed it. Huge acceleration. Massive speed differences. Now, that power is capped. Significantly. Which means overtakes become harder. Escapes become slower. And races become tighter. And that sounds great for the show. But for the team that used that boost better than anyone, it's a direct hit. Because what used to be a guaranteed move now becomes a fight. And fights bring uncertainty. But here's where it gets even more complex. Because there's a third change that doesn't just affect speed. It affects how the car behaves. Super clipping. Drivers described it as unpredictable. Like the car would suddenly slow itself down. Not something you could fully control. The FIA steps in and changes it. They make it smoother, more consistent, more predictable. And again, it sounds like an improvement. But in reality, it resets the field. Because the teams that had already figured it out lose that advantage. Years of understanding gone. And suddenly, everyone is learning again. At the same time. And just when you think that's everything, there's one more detail. One that connects directly to the controversy. The hidden trick. The one that gave certain teams a final burst of power at the end of a lap. That trick? Banned. Completely. No gray area. No interpretation. Just removed. And that single decision could be worth 1 or 2/10 of a second. Just at the finish line. Which, in Formula 1, is massive. Now step back and look at the full picture. Energy reduced. Boost limited. Behavior changed. Hidden advantage removed. For different areas. All modified at the same time. And this is where the question becomes unavoidable. Is this just about safety? Or is this about balance? Because when changes hit this many areas, this precisely, right after one team dominates, it stops feeling random. And starts feeling intentional. And that's exactly why Miami matters so much. Because for the first time, we're going to see what Formula 1 looks like. After the rules were rewritten. Not next season. Not in the future. Right now. Under pressure. With everything still adapting. And that's where the real uncertainty begins. And this is where the consequences start to collide. Because once all these changes come together, the effect is no longer subtle. It becomes visible. On the stopwatch. On the grid. On the track. Because when you remove multiple advantages from one team at the same time, something inevitable happens. The field compresses. And when the field compresses, everything changes. Gaps that once looked comfortable disappear. Half a second becomes a tenth. A tenth becomes nothing. And suddenly, the difference between first and third is a single mistake. That's the environment Miami is about to create. And here's why that matters. Because Formula 1 isn't just about speed. It's about control. Controlling the race from the front. Managing tires. Dictating strategy. Avoiding traffic. Mercedes had all of that. Because they started ahead and stayed ahead. But now? That control is under threat. Because if they lose even a small part of their qualifying advantage, they don't start first. And if they don't start first, they enter the pack. And the pack is chaos. Dirty air. Close battles. Limited visibility. Constant pressure. And with the boost reduced, escaping that chaos becomes harder than ever. So instead of leading comfortably, they might be fighting. Corner after corner. Lap after lap. And in that environment, anything can happen. But here's where it gets even more critical. Because while Mercedes is adapting, other teams are arriving prepared. Ferrari, for example, comes into Miami with updates designed to work with these new conditions. Not against them. Their car doesn't rely on extreme energy deployment. It thrives on balance. Consistency. Which means when the rules limit extremes, they become stronger. And Red Bull? They benefit from the changes to how energy is handled. Their biggest weakness, partially reduced. So while Mercedes is losing advantages, others are recovering performance. At the same time. And that's what creates a real shift. Not one team falling back, but multiple teams moving forward. Simultaneously. And suddenly, the grid that looked predictable becomes uncertain. For the first time this season, there's no clear reference. No guaranteed leader. No safe margin. Just variables. Unknowns. Questions. And Miami will answer them in real time. Because this isn't a normal race weekend. It's a sprint format. Less practice. Less time to understand the changes. Less time to fix mistakes. Which means teams are going in without a full picture. And when you combine new rules, new upgrades, and limited preparation, you get something Formula One rarely has: genuine unpredictability. And that leads to one final question. The one everything is building toward. When the lights go out in Miami, will Mercedes still be the team everyone is chasing? Or will we see, for the first time, a completely different fight at the front? And this is where everything finally connects. Because Miami isn't just another race. It's the first real test of a completely different Formula One. Not on paper, not in theory, on track, under pressure, with everything on the line. All the clues have been building toward this moment. The rule changes, the ban trick, the reduced power, the rewritten systems. Each one, a piece of a bigger shift. And now, for the first time, we get to see the result. Because the real question was never just, did the FIA change the rules? The real question is, what did those changes actually do? And here's the answer. They didn't slow everyone down equally. They redistributed performance. They took advantages from some and gave opportunities to others. They compressed the field. They removed extremes. They forced every team into the same window. And when that happens, dominance disappears. That's the key. Because Mercedes didn't just have a fast car. They had a car that operated perfectly within a very specific set of conditions. Conditions that no longer exist. Now, everything is tighter, more controlled, more limited, which means their margin is gone. Not completely, but enough. Enough for Ferrari to fight. Enough for Red Bull to challenge. Enough for mistakes to matter again. And that's what changes the championship. Because Formula One isn't decided by who is fastest once. It's decided by who can repeat performance under pressure. And pressure is exactly what Miami introduces. Less time, more uncertainty, more competition. And suddenly, the team that was managing races from the front has to fight for every position, every lap, every decision. But here's the final layer. The one that makes this bigger than just one weekend. The FIA made it clear. This isn't fixed. This isn't finished. They're watching closely. And if the balance still isn't right, they can change the rules again. Which means what happens in Miami doesn't just define one race. It sets the direction for everything that comes next. Because if Mercedes still wins comfortably, more changes could follow. If they don't, then this moment becomes the turning point. The moment the championship shifted. The moment the grid reset. The moment Formula One decided that no advantage is untouchable. And that leads to the question that now hangs over the entire season. Not who is fastest. Not who is leading. But something much deeper. In a sport where the rules can change this quickly, who really controls the outcome?